Head disk assembly is a collection of electronic components and moving parts assembled to tolerances measured in microns. A speck of dust or a fingerprint can cause this device to fail. Breakdown of these systems can result in tremendous loss of data, potentially costing users millions of dollars. The StorageTek plant that manufactures head disk assemblies is known as HDA. Working in a dust-free environment, the operators clean, assemble, and test the multitude of components that make up the unit. Prior to 1988, HDA was having difficulty producing a quality product. Assemblies were failing in the field, costing the company millions of dollars in service calls and returned items. In 1988, Dick Ralston became Vice President of Manufacturing. He was determined to turn the situation around.
We have to look for opportunities where we can make major shifts or changes in the way that we operate and perform.
He decided that along with StorageTek's Excellence Through Quality program, the only way to make a major change was to get all of the employees involved in redesigning their own work systems.
He wanted to change the organization, getting people involved, getting people to use their gray matter and break down the old culture of fear.
And now wanting to convert that, the management and the workers both, to an environment where everybody's involved, everybody's working together in a team fashion.
In this video, you will see how HDA now produces a product so high in quality that field failures have shrunk almost to zero. They have accomplished this using a self-designed work system so successful that many other StorageTek divisions are emulating it. You will also see how operators, managers, and engineers restructured into self-managing manufacturing teams, and how they went on to apply the concept to cross-functional support and plant governance. For example, a broad-based steering committee now shares many responsibilities once owned entirely by managers. When the managers were first introduced to the concepts of restructuring for high performance, they had mixed reactions. Bob Ream recalls that meeting.
What I recall most vividly was Dick Ralston, the vice president, walking into the room, introducing the session, and saying to all the managers, I want you to do something, because we need to change the way that we do work around here.
50% of us were scared to death, and the other 50 were kind of dragging our feet.
My feelings were from listening to what's going on, you know, the manager would be working with the people. So I'm saying, my God, am I going to have a job after this?
Well, you worked hard to get where you're at, and all of a sudden somebody's going to change the rules on you.
Nevertheless, there was no turning back. They had to go forward for the business to survive.
Honestly, I came out of the first session going, well, I don't know about this, but this is the wave of the future. This is going to happen.
They began by selecting a steering committee composed of managers. They soon expanded to include operators and engineers. The issue for them was how to design a new structure as quickly as possible.
StorageTek, like any high-tech corporation, is really interested in cycle time reduction. It just wasn't acceptable to the steering committee to spend 9 months or a year studying a system that changes rapidly. What we ended up with, through collaboration with the steering committee, was a simultaneous analysis process with a social analysis team, a technical analysis team, and the steering committee itself doing the environmental analysis.
After completing the 3 analyses, the teams integrated the data and, with input from the whole organization, came up with a final design for HDA. The new design called for a collaboration between 2 production teams, the core build team and the test team. Both of these teams are supported by a 3rd team called the core activity team, or the CAT team. The CAT team's function is to provide engineering changes on problems encountered by the production teams. All 3 teams participate in a weekly business review meeting where members are kept up to date on all aspects of the business. Overseeing this collaboration is a steering committee made up of managers, engineers, and operators. Since physical contamination causes most quality and reliability problems, the production teams perform most of their work in and around an area 100 times cleaner than a surgical operating room. This area is known as the clean room. Inside the clean room, HDAs are assembled and tested. On the outside, team members prepare some of the sub-assemblies and clean all of the parts before they are passed through special airlocks into the clean room for assembly. Completed HDAs are then packaged and shipped out. As we were guided through the clean room by employee Bonnie Carmichael, we began to understand the revolutionary impact self-management has had on the way work is done. In the past, operators sat at stations and performed the same function to each unit as it passed by their station on a conveyor. Now, each worker guides his or her unit from station to station, taking responsibility for the completion of the entire unit.
Gloria is loading the discs on a unit down there. She'll take that unit and go to the next station. She'll follow that unit all the way through. Before, you would get an operator that would come in here and pick one station and stay there all day long. Now, they take a unit from the end down there and they bring it all the way up to here.
Well, I used to stand in one place and do the same thing all day long, just like an assembly line. Do this, pass it on, do this, pass it on. And now you do this, go and do this, and it's yours. It's your number is on that product.
It gives you the ownership of the product you're building.
In the past, you could say, well, did I remember to torque that screw? Well, Joe will find it down there. Well, there's no Joe down there no more. If you think you forgot something, you go and find it and fix it.
As a self-managed production team, they manage a just-in-time inventory control system.
We have a JIT process. That is one of the most important things that we did to our process.
If you have a problem with a machine or something down the line, every area backfills. And when it does, that indicates a problem further down the road.
Shuts the line down. You stop so that you're not pushing any bad parts through.
In order to avoid overnight contamination, the team made a decision to only stock enough parts for the daily production run.
We go home at night and there might be 10 units sitting on the line and those discs need to be clean at all times. We come in the next morning, well, they'd been sitting all night and they'd get contaminated because they weren't covered up. Now, we don't leave anything sit on the line overnight.
Here in the clean room, the team tracks the production process and can even stop production if there are problems controlling production variables at the source of the problem before a large quantity of defective products are manufactured.
Yesterday we called the line down because we had a part problem. Before we would have had to get engineering to do it. Well, we went ahead and we took an early break and then we came back in. By the time we came back in, the problem was fixed. And we do that occasionally. We'll make a decision whether we should take an early break or an early lunch. Instead of standing around not doing anything, not being productive, we'll go ahead and take, if it's close to a lunch or break or something, we'll go ahead and do that, and then when we come back, it'll be ready for us to go. You don't see any engineers in here working the process. They recognize now that we are the ones that do the process, and they don't. So we can call our own line down.
All of the workers have access to a computer network called DACO, where they can notate problem areas and modify the production schedule according to what's going on.
One way for the test equipment maintenance people to know that we've got a problem is we have a function in our DACO, and whenever we have a problem with a machine or something, we can call it down in DACO, and it goes up on their screen over in their department, and then they can see it on the screen.
Supervisors and managers are seldom present in the production area, and when they are, they come in their new role as coaches. Traditional roles of monitoring and policing the workforce have given way to coaching and boundary management.
We know what our job is each day. We have our routine going. We're making more of our decisions and everything, so we don't need the managers in here.
Being an old traditional manager, it was a little scary to let go of things because you just always wanted to be controlling. Today, I don't do that. I go off and find people to bring back to help them solve a question.
The team also has direct input to process improvements. For instance, this water cleaning device, which replaced a Freon system, was developed by a team of engineers and production workers.
We involved basically 9 cross-functional members. All of us put the plan together of what we wanted this to look like. What we came up with was a process that literally cleans product anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times better than Freon. Because of the planning, this piece of equipment was installed in 3 days and operational within 1 week after its installation. We have had no changes occur with this piece of equipment. It's exactly what we designed. It functions exactly as we intended it to.
We have Larry in ETN.
In this system, the teams manage their own daily work schedule. Here, they are meeting to discuss the production schedule, update each other and managers on the status of the production process, and deal with day-to-day problems. Team members take turns facilitating the meetings. Today is Nit's first day to facilitate, and she's planning today's schedule.
We get a master schedule from marketing, and then we have set our own schedules about where we want to be in the business. We look at what we did the day before, and then we go through and we get the master schedule, and then we add that together and everything and find out who's going to be here, and that's where we get our daily build schedule at.
In the old process, management would have the schedule and then come to the people and tell them these are what the numbers are and this is what we need to do, with very little input from the operators themselves. But all of the decisions has been pushed down to the floor level, down to where the people are, who actually see these problems and need to make these decisions every day instead of management. And it works very well.
We still have loose connectors on the coils.
Today, the team is working on a problem that concerns loose connectors on the coil part of the HDA.
So I used the light out to see where the short was in the system, and basically it was pointing that the coil was shorted out.
In the past, loose or broken connectors were discovered only after the HDA failed during a test or in the field. The failed HDA would be returned, completely disassembled, the defective coil replaced, and the unit reassembled. This was a costly and time-consuming process. Today, every member of the team knows enough about the whole production process to watch for things like loose connectors. Here, the team is talking about the loose connector problem and identifies the quality and application of the glue that holds the connector in place as a cause.
I'm beginning to wonder if it's bad glue, but then thinking about it, if it was bad glue, you would think it would be all of them.
When I worked in the coil 3 years ago with Peggy, on the edge of each of the connectors, we did left a little bit of glue on it. I was told that will hold the connector better than just scrape it all off. Maybe if they scrape it all the way off, that automatically they get loose.
When we present an issue, we're pulling knowledge from each other. Erica remembered 3 years ago that scraping all the glue off caused a problem then. Maybe this is the same thing going on again. The way it used to be, nobody talked to nobody, and this problem could go on for 6 months, and we'd recall units if we had to, and I mean, it would get way out of control. This way, on a daily basis, the problems are addressed and taken care of a lot quicker.
In the new system, the operators are supported by a core activity team, or CAT team.
In this environment at HDA, there's about an equal number of operators and engineers working on the product. And so that creates some real challenges for how communication can occur and how decisions can be made across those various boundaries. And the CAT teams were there to support engineering changes that needed to be made, to solve problems that needed to be solved that the production workers were finding.
The CAT teams meet regularly and are also called into action by the production teams whenever a problem is identified. Here, a team of operators, technicians, engineers, and managers work together to solve difficult technical problems. Today, the CAT team takes up the issue of loose connectors that came up at this morning's team meeting.
It is a problem because I sent out a lot loose connectors yesterday, and
one thing that you might look at is maybe identify some coils that you've glued toward the end of the tube and then put those through the process.
As the engineers puzzle over the problem, Erica tells the CAT team what she had already brought up at this morning's team meeting.
Remember when Peggy was there, we did left a little bitty glue on both sides on the connector and on the former to hold the connector better. Now they scrape it all the way to this end, and I think that's the problem.
Using newly learned communication skills, the operators and engineers working together lay out a course of corrective action, which can begin immediately. Production can continue, and no defective products have been produced, avoiding costly delays and product failures. In the past, engineers solved the problems and operators implemented their design. In the new system, engineers have become a support system for the workforce.
We used to hear about these things through the channels, if you will, and now we hear about them in this meeting a little and involve them in the solving of it.
Traditionally, we try to idiot-proof things, engineer around it, and we ignore what the operator can bring to the process.
We, as engineers, would maybe slough off a couple of things as being fairly minor and reduce their importance. And now we let them decide what's really the most important for us.
More people have more involvement in it, into the product itself. If there's a problem, they deal with it.
If you tell them to check their brains at the door, yeah, sure, they probably will. And you don't get the benefit of that. They're quite capable of doing a quality job.
They'll a lot of times solve it prior to you even knowing about it. And
once you're working from a level of good communication and mutual respect, then you don't have to engineer around everything. You don't have to spend a lot of dollars to try to engineer something so that somebody can't possibly make a mistake. You can rely on the operator to do the job and to do it right.
HDA holds a weekly business review meeting. Representatives from all of the teams attend so that everybody is kept up to date about all aspects of the business.
It used to be called technical review. It was not open to everyone years ago.
It was mainly engineers and technicians reporting information up to management.
You know, every week there'd be a technical summary as to what goes on. Well, the people from the test area were not invited to that.
When we redesigned this, we really tried to focus in on getting the information channels vertical and horizontal.
I think the management came to the realization that the people who knew their product the best were the people who had their hands on it every day, but they weren't being listened to.
And now by sitting in on this, we can ask the questions and give our input as to how we feel the area should be run.
It's open. Anybody can come. Anybody can say what they want.
You know that there are people in there that want to hear what you have to say about how to improve the product and how to make it better.
And it makes you feel a lot better when you can say, here's what our team did that I'm on, and we got to do this, and we accomplished this, and it's done this, and now there's not this problem anymore.
We happened to change the name from Tech Review to Business Review because we thought we should be reviewing our business every week at this meeting, not just the technical aspects.
And I think that's very important to the operators. We build the product. We need to know what's going on.
Having the people that do the work involved in the business review meeting has had some tangible results. Members of the test team came up with a solution to a difficult problem. The problem was that computerized product testing often stops and needs to be restarted by an operator. When it stops outside of working hours, it causes unnecessary and costly delays.
Thursday night, after the last person leaves, the test could stop 5 minutes later, and then it wouldn't run the whole weekend. So I come in on Monday and I need to ship HDAs Monday morning, and these 8 should have been done, except for they all stopped because of, this, and nobody's seen it since then, so it hasn't, it hasn't finished its tests.
Their idea was to monitor the process from home using personal computers and modems.
So everybody got together and brainstormed ideas on how we could do that. We came up with the idea to work at home, using PCs with a modem through the phone lines. And
so the test team made a formal presentation to the business review meeting.
when we got there, we were sweating bullets, bad, because half the faces in there we'd never even seen before.
We took some bites out of that presentation. I mean, we found faults with the presentation, their calculation style.
We went back and we recalculated all our data, came back with more proposals.
And the net result is we're doing that today.
Have saved almost 40% cycle time now.
I feel the fact that we had this open forum and a feeling of openness, we could talk about radical ideas like that didn't come from a management level. It came from people that were right there that could see the problem and could figure out the solution.
It used to be any decisions made, business decisions, came from the top down. This particular one that Matt's talking about came from the bottom up. It was a radical idea. It works great. We're empowered to do that.
I'd like to introduce Jeff DeBetz and Erica.
By extending its membership beyond the managers, the steering committee has evolved into a participative decision-making team.
We have two leadership systems within our organization. One is the director's staff, and that is all the information that flows from the upper management and it flows down to the organization. We have another leadership going on, and that's flowing up, and that's the steering committee. Information is coming from people. We have the operators and engineers, technicians on the steering committee.
It allowed us to share, rather than put the burden on just a few managers.
They are so committed to total participation that the steering committee played a major role in the selection of a new director for HDA.
I met with the steering committee and told them that, announced that John was moving on, and that I would be going through a process over the next week or two of selecting who John's replacement was going to be.
And a couple of us contacted our vice president and said, if we're StorageTek, we should be part of the process of choosing our new director.
I hadn't much more got back to my office, I believe, after that meeting. Then I had a couple inquiries from different directions. Could the steering committee be a part of that selection process?
And I think there was a big gulp on the other side of that line. But he came back a day later and said, yeah, I have some rules about it.
What if I selected a couple of candidates, both of which would be acceptable to me, and that they went through and were a process of selecting which one of those that they wanted to be their new leader?
The team underwent the extensive training necessary to share in this decision.
So we sat down as a steering committee, along with our departing director and our vice president, and we interviewed the candidates.
And that was a big, big step for the steering committee. Maybe not so much for the managers on the steering committee, but Chris Chavez and I are just operators, and that's something that was totally unheard of for operators in this company.
Actually, we came up with a process of how we were going to make the selection. We interviewed the candidates, and we actually made the selection, and it was consensus, 100%.
I made the deal with the team that whichever one that they did not select, that they would take on the responsibility to go tell the person that didn't get the job how come and why not.
The two candidates for the director's job were also fellow steering committee members. And that, I think maybe that might have been the toughest part.
We took a risk in saying we want to select our manager, and our vice president was comfortable enough at that time that he was willing to take the risk with us.
And as a change champion, we have to be willing to do those innovative things and suggest that this group would select the director.
It was a very good experience something I'll never forget.
In the middle of the implementation process, an unexpected event disrupted the entire redesign effort. News came that the commercial life of the product was coming to an end. StorageTek was closing the HDA unit and moving the employees to other businesses within the corporation.
Right around the time that we started implementing it, realized that the market window was closing rapidly.
Fact was that, as is the case in high-tech organizations particularly, new products come out very quickly and old ones go away. And that's what was happening here.
It just puts a pandemonium of fear and mistrust through an organization.
Traditionally and historically at StorageTek, as well as many other companies, that kind of information is kept from people as long as possible.
Managers have fear of telling the people what's going to happen or what's going on.
But they decided that with the higher trust level in the plant and the new design and all the energy that had been stimulated by that, let's go trust people.
There was an all-employees meeting, and that's when the news came of the end of life.
We came out and said that, guess what, folks, we're going to go out of business in a couple of years.
People threw up their arms and said, why are we even implementing? Why are we even doing this? We're not going to be here. We're going out of business. This doesn't make sense.
Everybody started remembering the layoffs, and they thought for sure that's what was happening all over again. Well, forget about StorageTek, forget about everything we've always done, because we're going to be laid off.
One of the things that really helped a lot was the fact that higher levels of management at StorageTek commitment was really emerging not to lay anyone off.
And so we were bound and determined no more layoffs.
I think we became a organization that values the people. We cared for them. We valued them instead of devalued them.
The employees became involved in the redeployment effort by coming up with a plan to market themselves to the rest of the corporation.
And so they put together a marketing campaign with a flyer talking about the high level of quality of the HDA product, how it soared over the last couple of years and why that's true, and what part employee participation and involvement had to do with that. And they began to use their little marketing campaign as a way to convince other parts of the company that they couldn't afford not to hire them.
As HDA winds down its operation, the redeployed employees are spreading their new knowledge and skills across the company.
Each of those people have been highly welcomed by the receiving groups because of their training, which is well beyond the norm in terms of people from comparable areas that have not gone through this, and enthusiasm, not only for their job in HDA, but for the corporation as well.
The employees are determined to keep their high quality right down to the last product they ever produce.
Even though we're shutting the doors down, there's still an important job to do. And we wanted to do it as good as we could.
We still had to make sure we looked at the cost goals, the quality goals, the product reliability goals.
There's a lot of work that a lot of people put into it, and they couldn't just let it go.
And their efforts have had powerful results for the company.
We had continuously improved yields, therefore lower product costs. The field performance and reliability of that product went up by more than a factor of 10.
We wouldn't have pulled off, from a business standpoint, what we did in continue to improve the quality of the product if we hadn't been where we were in self-managed work teams.